My father called me out of the blue and said, "You're my child, so it's your duty to buy me a brand new car." When I refused, he scoffed, "Then I'll tell everyone you abandoned me." I smirked, pulled up a screenshot, and said, "Interesting, since you haven't called me in 5 years, but now I know why." I hadn't heard from my father in over 5 years. Not a birthday text. Not a single check-in. Nothing. Silence. The kind of silence that echoes. When I got older, I learned that silence wasn't neutral, it was a decision. And he made that decision over and over again. Then, out of nowhere, he called. It was a Wednesday. I was making dinner, pasta, nothing fancy. My phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. I thought it might be a telemarketer. It wasn't. "Hello?" I answered, already halfway distracted. "Hey, it's your dad." Just like that. No build-up. No explanation. No apology. Like we spoke yesterday. I didn't say anything for a second. Just stared at the stove. The voice alone brought up a wave of complicated emotions, anger, confusion, the smallest twinge of curiosity. But mostly, it just felt surreal. "You there?" he asked. "Yeah," I finally replied. And without hesitation, like he had planned the speech all day, he jumped right into it. "Look, I need a car. Something decent. Nothing too flashy, but brand new. My last one gave out and I know you're doing okay now. It's your job to look after your father. You're my child. It's your duty." I had to sit down. My heart was pounding. Not out of guilt, but rage. A slow-building, deep kind of rage that had been sitting in my gut for years, waiting for a moment like this. "Wait, you're serious?" I asked. "Yes, I'm serious," he snapped. "You think I'd call you for fun? I know you've got a good job now." I checked. I asked around. He'd been asking about me? That was news. "And listen," he added, like he was giving me some twisted warning, "if you're not going to help me, that's fine. But I will tell everyone you abandoned me. Your aunts, your uncles. They'll hear about this. Everyone will know what kind of child you really are." He said it like a threat. Like he had the upper hand. I sat there stunned. For a moment, I didn't even know what to say. And then I remembered. I opened my laptop, clicked through my old email backups, found exactly what I needed, a screenshot of our last exchange from 5 years ago. His number was blocked after that conversation. He told me then that I was on my own. He didn't want to be a father anymore. That was the last thing he said. I unblocked him a year ago. Not because I wanted to reconnect, just curiosity. Maybe some small, broken part of me hoped he'd reach out. But he never did. Until now. I took a deep breath. "Interesting," I said, my voice calm. "Because I've got proof you haven't called me in 5 years. I've got the messages. The screenshots. You said I was dead to you. And now that you need something, I'm your duty." He didn't say anything. I wasn't done. "Let me guess," I continued. "You burned your bridges with everyone else. You used up your favors. And now I'm the last one standing. That about right?" "Don't talk to me like that," he snapped. "I'm still your father." I almost laughed. "No," I said. "You're a man who donated sperm and dipped. You chose your pride over parenting a long time ago. You think you're better than me now?" He spat. "No," I replied, "but I know I'm better off without you." Then he went quiet again. It was a weird silence. Not the shocked kind. The calculating kind. Like he was weighing what to say next. Finally, he muttered, "I always knew you'd turn out selfish." That hit hard. Because deep down, I knew part of me still wanted his approval. And here he was, confirming that he never gave it, and never would. But the difference now? I didn't need it. "Thanks for confirming everything," I said flatly. "Really? This cleared up a lot." He tried again. "Just think about it. You could make things right." And I snapped. "No. I didn't break anything. You did. You ghosted me. You didn't show up. You picked fights, disappeared, blamed everyone but yourself, and left me with the mess. You don't get to waltz back in and make demands now. You haven't earned anything from me." Another pause. Then he said, with pure bitterness in his voice, "I'll tell everyone you let your own father rot." I smiled. Not out of joy, but relief. Because this was the closure I didn't know I needed. "You do that," I said. "I've got the receipts. And anyone who matters already knows the truth." Then I hung up. After I hung up, I sat there for a while, phone in one hand, staring at the wall. I wasn't angry anymore. Just tired. Drained in a way that's hard to explain. Like I had just cleaned out a room in my mind I forgot even existed, and now it was empty. But the peace didn't last long. About 2 days later, I started getting weird texts. First from my aunt, my dad's sister, who I hadn't talked to in years either. She messaged me, out of nowhere. "You really told your own father to screw off when he's in need? That's cold." I blinked at the screen. Thought about ignoring it. But then came the second one. Then the third. All different cousins, a couple old family friends. Some were nicer than others. Most of them basically said the same thing. Your dad said he reached out for help and you laughed in his face. He was working fast. I took a deep breath and replied once, just once. He didn't reach out. He demanded. And he hasn't spoken to me in 5 years. If you want to hear the whole story, I'll send you screenshots. Most of them didn't reply after that. One cousin, Chris, did. He just said, damn. Send them. I sent the messages. Screenshots of old voicemails. The email where my dad called me ungrateful trash for not understanding how hard his life had been. The message where he told me I was nothing like the child he wanted. Chris didn't text back after that. But he also didn't say anything else to defend my dad. So, I counted that as a small win. Then the next twist hit. I got a call from HR at my job. Apparently, someone had emailed my manager, using a fake name, claiming I was neglecting a disabled parent, and was publicly disrespecting a man with multiple health conditions. They didn't give a name, but the HR person said the tone was personal. I knew exactly who sent it. Luckily, I work with decent people. HR just flagged it and moved on. But the damage was done. I knew now he was going to try anything. He wasn't just hurt, he was going to war. And this was where it got dark. A few days after the HR email, I found out from a mutual family friend that my father had started a GoFundMe. Yes, a GoFundMe. Title: Disabled Father Abandoned by Only Child, Needs Help Getting a Car to Survive. He posted an old photo of us together. I was maybe 6. Had my arms around his neck, smiling like I hadn't yet learned what kind of man he really was. The photo alone was enough to mess with my head. But the story underneath? That was a masterpiece of manipulation. He said he raised me alone. Lie. That he gave up everything for me. Bigger lie. That now, after years of being there, I had cut him off cold because I was ashamed of him. He didn't use my name, but he hinted enough that people who knew us could tell. And people donated. Not a lot, but enough to sting. The page had about $3,200 in 2 weeks. I was furious. I wanted to report it. I wanted to scream. But instead, I took screenshots. Collected the lies. The photo. The captions. The comments, some of which were from family members who still believed him. I saved every bit of it. Then, I made a call. There was one person in my life who knew the full history, my mother's sister, Aunt Michelle. She had seen everything. She knew the abuse, the years he skipped child support, the custody battles. She had stories that made my skin crawl even now. I hadn't talked to her in a while, not out of drama, just life getting in the way. But she picked up on the second ring. I was wondering when you'd call, she said. He's been running his mouth. That's when I realized something. She had already seen the GoFundMe. Why didn't you say anything? I asked. I wanted to see what you'd do, she said. You're an adult now. He still thinks you're a scared little kid. Let him. I explained everything, the call, the threats, the smear campaign. She listened. And then she told me something that stopped me cold. He's not sick, she said. He's never been sick. He's just broke. He's deep in debt and trying to play victim before the creditors catch up. Of course. It all made sense now. Michelle had copies of old medical bills or lack thereof. She even had court documents from when he'd tried to claim medical hardship to avoid paying back child support. Denied. No doctor would back him up. I took all of it. And that's when the real idea started forming. Not revenge for the sake of revenge. But a correction. A loud, public one. I wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. So I started building my response. I wasn't going to fire back with insults or try to outmanipulate him. That's his game. I wanted truth. Cold, documented, undeniable truth. Something he couldn't twist. So I put together a public post. No names, no threats. Just screenshots, old texts, the dead to me, email, the GoFundMe, and the fake HR complaint that thankfully my boss let me see. I included the part about how we hadn't spoken in 5 years until he randomly demanded I buy him a car. I titled the post, "This is what happens when a parent tries to guilt their way back into your life for money." I didn't tag anyone. I didn't name him. But people knew. Family started DMing me. Friends from childhood who remembered the stories. Even some people who had donated to his GoFundMe. One woman, someone I barely remembered from my dad's church circle, sent me a private message. He told us he raised you alone. I feel sick. I donated $200. That was the first crack. Then came the bombshell. A woman, let's call her Tara, reached out to me after reading the post. She said she was my half-sister. Yeah, you read that right. She said our dad had been with her mom before mine. That he disappeared when she was 8. Just vanished. No support, no calls. Sound familiar? She'd seen the GoFundMe because he used her photo too. A photo of her as a kid, sitting on his lap, the same trick he pulled with mine. Claimed she was his niece, since people were starting to question why the kid in the fundraiser picture was a totally different person every week. So now, not only was he lying, he was stealing identities. From his own kids. I asked her if she had any proof, and she sent it all. Birth certificate, old family photos, court documents where her mom tried to chase him down for support. All the same moves, just a different timeline. Different target. It was like looking into a mirror. A messed up, painful mirror. And it got worse. She wasn't the only one. 2 more women reached out over the next few days. One said her mom dated my dad briefly when they were both working at a hardware store in Atlanta in the late 90s. He ghosted the moment she told him she was pregnant. Another said he had stayed with her family as a roommate when she was 10, but left a few months later and never paid rent. She believed he was her dad too, but never had proof. She just said he had that same weird scar on his wrist. And the same way of pretending he was a victim when he got caught lying. This man wasn't just a deadbeat. He was a pattern. A con. I started organizing everything. A full timeline. Names and dates. Court documents. Pictures. Every lie he told. Every person he used. I kept it all. I even had one of the women send me a voice recording of him leaving a message last year. You don't want to cut me out of your life. That's not what good daughters do. You'll regret this when I'm gone. Same script. Word for word. It was like he had a playbook. Meanwhile, his GoFundMe was still growing. He posted an update about how I was spreading lies because I was mentally unstable and being manipulated by jealous relatives. He said he was in danger and needed to move for his safety. He didn't know I had every message, every threat. And now, 3 other women backing me up with receipts. I didn't go nuclear yet, but I was close. Then came the last twist, the part I'm still wrapping my head around. A lawyer reached out. Turns out one of the donors to the GoFundMe was a retired paralegal who knew how to read between the lines. She'd looked him up, found the old court cases, and saw that he had never been granted full custody of me, despite claiming he raised me alone. She contacted me and asked if I'd be open to a civil suit, fraud, defamation, maybe even identity misuse, depending on what we could prove. I didn't know what to say. I'm not litigious. I don't like courtrooms. But something about this, about him taking real people's money using lies, dragging my name through the mud, and still walking around acting like he was the victim, something about that made my stomach turn. I told her I'd think about it. And I am. Because this isn't just family drama anymore. This is about accountability. About stopping someone before they do this to the next kid, the next woman, the next person who doesn't see the red flags in time. He hasn't backed down. He's still playing the sad old man. But the mask is slipping. And I'm not the only one watching now. I thought I was prepared for whatever would happen next. But nothing really prepares you for a moment when years of resentment, lies, and emotional damage are forced into the light, in front of everyone. It all came to a head at my cousin Lisa's wedding. Lisa was one of the few family members still neutral. She hadn't picked sides, hadn't messaged me anything hateful. She invited me, despite knowing things were tense. I almost didn't go, but part of me needed to show my face. I didn't want my dad's version of things to be the only one people remembered. He was there, of course. He looked thinner, older, but the same smug smile was there when our eyes met. Like he thought he still had the upper hand. Like this was his court, and I'd just entered it without armor. I avoided him most of the evening, stayed close to Lisa and a few distant relatives who didn't know the full story. Then came the speech part of the night. Lisa got up, said her sweet, emotional thank you speech, and then passed the mic to the elders to say a few words. That's when my dad stood up. I felt it immediately, the shift in energy. People glanced at me, then back at him. He grabbed the mic, cleared his throat, and said, I just want to say how proud I am to see our family still coming together, even when certain people don't appreciate what family really means. The room went quiet. And I know some of you have heard things about me lately, he continued, hurtful things. Lies. Things from people who have no idea what it means to struggle, to sacrifice, to raise a child alone and be thrown away like trash. Lisa tried to cut in, awkwardly reaching for the mic, but he turned away from her. I raised my child with nothing. I gave up everything. And now she's turned on me. Told the whole world I'm a monster. Just for asking for help. For a car. A simple request. And now I'm the villain. The silence was deafening. I stood up. I didn't plan to. My body just moved. I walked straight up to him, stood next to him at the mic, and asked, calmly, do you want to do this here? Right now? He looked at me, jaw tight. I'm just telling the truth. I nodded, took the mic gently from his hand, and turned to the room. I wasn't going to say anything tonight. But I think everyone deserves to hear the actual truth, since he brought it up. And then, I let it out. The 5 years of silence. The demand for a brand new car. The threats. The GoFundMe scam. The fake HR complaint. The half-siblings. The emails where he disowned me, the photos he stole, the money he took from strangers under false stories. I pulled out my phone, held it up, and read the last line he wrote to me before we stopped talking 5 years ago. "You'll regret cutting me off. When you're older, you'll see I was the only one who ever really cared." The room was frozen. No music. No whispers. Just raw, awkward silence. He tried to laugh it off. "You're twisting everything. You're emotionally unstable." But then someone from the crowd, Chris, my cousin who'd seen the screenshots, stood up. "She's not lying," he said. "I saw it. I didn't want to believe it, but I saw it." And then another voice, Tara, the half-sister. She had come at my quiet invitation. She stood in the back, face pale, voice steady. "I'm his daughter too. He left us when I was 8. Same story. Same lies." My dad's face drained of all color. He looked around, searching for someone, anyone, to defend him. No one did. He muttered something under his breath and walked out. Lisa followed him out the door, trying to calm him, but he waved her off. I heard him yell, "They've all turned on me," before the doors slammed behind him. I sat down. My legs were shaking. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just sat. The rest of the night was quiet. Nobody said much. Some people came up to hug me. Others just nodded, like they didn't know what to say. The aftermath wasn't dramatic, just cold. Over the next few days, the GoFundMe was taken down. Enough people reported it, and with the evidence I provided, the platform refunded some of the bigger donations. His little narrative crumbled. He tried to save face, posting vague statuses about being betrayed, but no one bit this time. He lost control of the story. As for me, I blocked him again. For good this time. There was no apology, no letter, no attempt to make things right. And I realized he never wanted to fix anything. He just wanted control. And when that failed, he turned to guilt, lies, and public shaming. The hardest part wasn't the public confrontation. It was the realization that I had spent so many years wondering what was wrong with me, why I wasn't enough, why I couldn't earn his love. But now I know. It was never about me. It was always about him. I still feel the sting sometimes, the small ache when I see dads laughing with their kids. The weird silence on Father's Day. But mostly, I feel free. I don't owe him anything. I owe myself peace. And I'm finally giving myself that.